Welcome to the Code with Jason meetup. It's just me and my friend Derek today. Derek, welcome.
Good to be here.
Good to have you here. You and I have known each other for just a few months now. We met in Boston when I visited there in June 2024. It's now September 2024. It's crazy. June, July, August, September. That was like 3 months ago. Um, yeah, and we were talking about looking for jobs and such. Um, I'd never told you this, Derek, but something that I do just as kind of a professional hobby, you might call it, is I help people get jobs and I help companies find developers. I don't do it for a fee or anything like that. I just do it because I think it's good karma. Um, you know, as you know, Derek, I work as a consultant, independent consultant, and doing that kind of stuff helps me meet people and it helps me plant goodwill and stuff like that. And so it's kind of a selfish altruism. Um anyway, the job market, as everybody knows, is pretty tough. Um as I was saying a minute ago before we hit record, job ads will get hundreds of applicants or maybe even over 1,000 applicants. And so there's a question of like, how do you get heard above the noise? How do you distinguish yourself? And I have some ideas. Um, one thing, and this isn't just a job search thing, um, but I since I host a podcast and I have for several years now, I got myself a fancy microphone so that I sound decent on camera. And you can't really see it, but in my office, you can see the edge of one right here, this gray thing.
hmm
I have one, two, three, four, five, six acoustic baffles. I have one right above me because otherwise it's kind of echoey in here. So I've done some certain things to try to sound good. And then I've also done some certain things to try to look good because I do these videos now. Um, and so I think it goes out of focus sometimes. Um, but ever since I've done these things with my audio and video, I've been acutely aware. I'm just trying to get it to focus. There we go. I've been acutely aware of when I get on calls with people and their audio and video is not great. And that, frankly, it's almost everybody. Like almost nobody puts any effort into looking or sounding good on video. And in this like post-COVID world, everybody's remote. And so via the computer is like the only way that most of your professional contacts interact with you. And
Yeah.
so to me, it's actually kind of crazy that like this is the only way we interact with most people now, yet most people don't put any effort into how they come across in that interaction.
Mm.
And this is something I myself didn't think about again until I got this audio and video stuff. And so it might be a surprising place to start the conversation, but one of the things that I want to share for anybody on the job hunt, or even if you're not on the job hunt, is this topic of the audio video thing. Um, and obviously I'm not picking on you, Derek, because this is almost everybody who doesn't have something special.
Yeah.
But is this something you've thought about at all, like the audio video setup on calls?
I actually, I have made an effort in the past with the interviews to definitely make sure that I did have that. Right now, I've kind of moved my office around since some of the things we talked about earlier. Um, but yeah, so right now, like I only have like the window light here, and the light over here hits me differently. But usually, I like to have balanced lighting so you can kind of not you can't make eye contact, but like just so you can see kind of where your eyes are looking.
Sure,
Um,
you can make eye contact. Look, I'm making eye contact right now.
yeah, that's true. And then just have balanced lighting. Like right now, I got this like cold, dingy lighting, but I usually like to try and have some sort of warm or like white neutral light, um, which during the day I would normally have coming from here. But yeah, I've
Mhm.
kind of arranged thing in an odd way. But I think the audio is super important because
Yeah. Yeah, I
I've
think
worked
both.
with people where you couldn't even tell what they were saying, like on Tuple or something like that.
Oh,
Paramount.
yeah. Yeah, I think both are really important. Like, watch this. So I have a what's called a box light right here to my left. I'm gonna turn it off and you can see the difference. So that's with it off.
Mm,
And it doesn't look terrible, but now I think I'm down to like the quality of like most people's video. And then even worse is if I do this. If I turn on my lamp back here, now everything just looks like garbage. Like this is so distracting, this light here. And now I'm backlit. Oh, and another big problem that I see a lot of times is people will be like silhouetted. So like I don't know. I can't
yeah,
really replicate it, but like if you have a window behind you, you're just totally silhouetted and it just looks really bad.
yeah, that's actually I kind of have that behind my head right now too, and with the blue. So yeah, ideally I would have better light over here in front of me, uh,
Mhm.
and I would probably either have this light off or it would just be focused in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely be inclined to have that overhead light off. That was one of the first things I noticed when your video came on. I'm like, oh fuck, he has that overhead light, and it's like it's not the effect you want. Um, yeah, and this light, it's a big, really bright light. Like I'm being blasted right now by
Mm,
this light. It's like, when you go to a professional photography studio and you get your picture taken, it's like one of those. It's really like actually kind of surprising the level of light you need in order to uh, be as illuminated as you need to be.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true.
And then also I have a camera that's not just my computer's camera.
Mm,
Um, it's a Logitech Brio, I believe it is.
okay.
Um, and I'll mention the prices of various things because I imagine people will be curious about that. This was like a few $100. It was like 200 or 300 bucks if I remember correctly. Um, but like developers make a lot of money and you can afford that. And even if somebody is jobless right now, like it's a worthwhile investment if you're going to get a job that pays 100 grand plus. You can spend $1,000 on some equipment to make yourself look good. Um, so
Yeah.
Logitech Brio, that's a good camera. Obviously, looks much better than just the stock laptop camera. And the positioning matters. Um, a lot of times you get on a call with somebody and their laptop is at an angle relative to their face, and so you're seeing like this weird angle
Yeah,
where it's
that.
like you're seeing up their nose. Yeah. Um, and like it's just unnatural because you're never like looking at somebody from that angle in day-to-day interactions. And so I made sure to put my camera almost at eye level. Um, it's on top of this monitor, and so it's not quite at eye level, obviously. But this is like a more natural angle than if it's coming from like right here.
Mm,
So like all these details really matter. Um, and considering what's in the frame too, this is very much theater what I have here. Like this is deliberate placement of this plant and this piano and these books. I want people to see these books and be like, "Oh wow, look at all those books. Jason's probably a smart guy." And he plays piano. Wow, how talented. Um, I'm putting on a very deliberate effect here. A lot of times like you get on a call, like your background, Derek, seems pretty good. It just looks normal. But a lot of times you get on a call and there's like dirty laundry in the background or an unmade bed or something like that, and it just really doesn't give a great impression.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I also have to get used to too, which really brings in like especially now thinking about interviews because this is now like my personal MacBook Pro, but it's like just like it's not a fancy one. It's a few years old too. So
Hmm.
like before I had like I don't know, the last time I jumped on a call, I think is when I was when I did one with you and your son. I think that
Yeah.
one was on my work machine, I'm pretty sure. And that one was
Mhm.
like, you know, great lighting. It was like it was taller too, so it was a little more elevated.
Mhm.
It was like a newer one, like nicer stuff. So like I'm gonna have to really make sure that I'm nailing that now too, because the I don't have hardware that's gonna be making up for it built in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, one little trick I learned is you can just put a stack of books under your laptop to raise it up closer to eye level.
That's a very yeah, that's actually it's probably the cheapest way to do it.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, and let's talk audio. So me, I happen to have a Shure SM7B. I think it was like 400 bucks. So that's on the relatively higher end side.
Mm,
Um, not everybody's gonna need or want that. Before this, I had a Shure SM57, and that's like 100 bucks, and that's plenty good. Um, don't get a Blue Yeti. It's a scam. Ironically, it's more expensive than an SM57. Last time I checked, a Blue Yeti was like 130 bucks or something like that.
hmm.
But it's actually a significantly worse microphone than an SM57. Um, so don't do that. And there's this YouTube video that explains why Blue Yetis are inferior. Um, but I have this, and it goes through a Focusrite audio interface because this microphone has an XLR cable that comes out of it. Um, and obviously, your computer's not going to have an XLR port, so you have to plug it into the audio interface, which has a USB cable, and you can do it that way.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, so that covers some of the audio stuff, and then again, I have these acoustic baffles. I got expensive ones. These are like 80 bucks a piece or something like that. So I spent like hundreds of dollars on these. But again, I have a podcast. It matters more. But if you don't care, you can get like there's like cheaper like what do they call it? Like egg carton foam or whatever.
Oh yeah, I've seen that where it's kind of just yeah. I have a buddy who puts that in his music room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You could put that. I don't know. I think you don't even have to. I think you could just kind of like sticky, like throw it up, depending on the ones you get.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to have something like that. Um, one last thing on appearance on video, just clothing and grooming and stuff like that. Um, I'm not doing a very good job of that today. I have kind of a wrinkled undershirt and I haven't shaved.
I would say
Um,
the same for me too.
yeah.
I didn't do my hair up. I didn't have that. I was definitely taking it easy this Sunday morning, but yeah, normally definitely. That is actually something I've always been overly self conscious about. So not like on an insecurity thing, but like I do care about making a. I think a first impression matters, and definitely how you present yourself. You know, is a really
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not even like expensive clothes. It's just looking. You know, it reflects an amount of preparation if you have that in your clothing. I feel like you know. Um,
Right.
some people say, "Why does it matter? Why does it matter?" Like it matters my skill set or this or that. But it's just like I mean, I agree. We're past the point where we need to be showing up to everything in a suit and a tie. But
Hmm.
not like have a presentable shirt on. Grooming enough where it doesn't look like you woke up, in a van.
Yeah.
Hair's
Yeah.
presentable like that. That all makes a difference. It really does.
Yeah, I think it shows respect for the other person and the occasion and stuff like that.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. Okay, moving on from all that stuff. Um, another big thing is your online footprint.
Mm.
Because I think a lot of times hiring managers are presented with like a stack of resumes, and they're like, okay, I have like 80 applicants, and they all look okay. They aren't really like very distinguishable from one another. Um, and having some kind of online footprint can make you stick out. And so I don't know, when I've like needed to hire people in the past, you have very little to go off of, like it's just a resume. Um, and maybe whatever info from the application or whatever. But if I can go to that person's website and see something about them to get some kind of clues, then that helps.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I'm trying to keep in mind. Like I notice every time I make a post on LinkedIn, like I don't know, maybe it's just a made up metric, but it's like X amount or Y amount of people have seen it or whatever. Um, they say it helps stuff get seen. I have a GitHub, but I only have like currently I only have one old project on there from like years ago, and then everything else is in a private repository because it's all stuff that I did with my current employer. So that's not anything no one's going to be able to see that. I can tell them about it,
Right.
but they can't see it. So I think one of my game plans this time is I'm going to make well, I'm starting, but I'm going to be posting, pushing that up to GitHub, but I'm probably just going to I don't know, document it on LinkedIn because
Yeah.
see it and it's just whatever, maybe explaining something I want to do and why or the challenge of it or what I think would be fun to do because at least people can see my thought process and what I'm up to. And I think that's a really easy way to convey it. I don't know if hiring managers pay attention to that, but that's a thought process for me of what I'm considering this time.
Yeah, I definitely think some of them do. Almost anything is better than nothing because
Mm,
it's like, uh, I want to hopefully like get a sense of who people are before I consider interviewing them or whatever. And if you have something online, anything at all that can give me that sense, that helps. Even if it's like, hey, my name's Dave. I like hiking and banjo or something like that. It's like, okay, I can like see what Dave is about a little bit.
mm.
Um, Another thing, just to go back to like appearance and all that stuff, having a decent quality headshot is good, and surprisingly few people have this.
Yeah,
Um, and actually, just for fun, let's just go to LinkedIn right now and see what we can find.
I
Like
got
if
a
we,
good one.
what's that?
I said I got a good one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. Yeah, I think
Oh,
it's
like you mean your personal LinkedIn you think is good?
yeah, yeah. Like my headshot, like I made the effort for that because like you were spot on with that. It's like it's super important. Some people it looks like a MySpace picture from like 2009.
How the
And
heck do I spell your last name?
it is Fonseca.
That's what I thought, but it didn't autocomplete for me. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah, this is a nice photo.
Yeah, try to go with something that's my hair's a little shorter than it is now, but you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, let's see. I'm just scrolling through. I don't know. Actually, most of these photos I'm seeing are like fine, but sometimes you see somebody's LinkedIn photo and it's clearly just like uh there was a group photo and they just like cropped their face and there's like part of somebody else's head in the photo and it's
yeah.
like it's
I've
good to
seen
just
the
show
bad
a little bit of
backlighting too.
effort.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen the bad backlighting too, where it's like they took like a selfie
Oh yeah.
and then it's just like them with glasses and it's like a sunny day. And again, it's like
Yeah,
wet. And
right.
I don't know. I mean, maybe this is just me, but like I'm not crazy about the whole like I'm seeing people do the AI generated images of themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
I
don't
think
like
it's
it.
fun with your friends, but it's kind of cringy on there. I don't know. To
Mhm.
me, it is. It's just like, come on, man. You over here looking like a superhero. Like you're, that's not you. We know that. Even if it is
Right.
business, like if it looks business, it's still not you. It's
Yeah, it's a weird like virtual plastic surgery kind of thing.
yeah. It's just very. I don't know. To me, like if when people use that, I've seen it on people's LinkedIn's, and I'm like, it kind of makes me like, ugh, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's weird.
Something very dishonest about it. You know.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, another thing is participation in the community. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can do that. Um, that's how you and I met each other, of course. We met at the Boston Ruby meetup when I went and spoke there. Um, and now, it's like you're looking for work right now, and I can potentially help you with that. And so like meeting people in the community, it definitely can help.
Yeah, yeah, I think it does, and I think it helps with. I don't know. There's something about like hanging out, just chatting with people about things that are going on and stuff. I think it just helps express and articulate what you're doing outside of the context of work, um,
Hmm.
which I think sometimes as engineers, as developers, like we're sometimes we get so used to speaking in the specific context of work. I think you kind of forget like just how to what the big picture is of what you're doing. So I think just explaining certain challenges or things I've done to people who they don't know the product I'm working on, but they have an idea
Hmm.
of like, oh yeah, whatever that thing could be. It could be something really really simple, like just I don't know, concurrency, background jobs, N+1 queries, like certain things that led to those challenges. You can have parallels with people, and then you can learn more about what you're doing and why, um, in a more broad sense rather than
Yeah.
like specific product or something like that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And honestly, I think the most important thing is just to like make friends, because that's that's how, I don't know if this is true, but like I think that's how most jobs happen. Like people get referred, and it's not necessarily like primarily based on merit or competence or anything like that. It's just people refer their friends and people they like and stuff like that. And obviously, every place has their technical competence screening and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like a lot of that stuff doesn't really like it doesn't really actually serve as the filter that like it supposedly should or whatever.
Mm.
Like those mechanisms often filter out good people, and they let bad people pass through.
Mm.
Um, so like I feel like a lot of people focus too much on like it's like they see the job search as like they have to qualify for this like test. And they're going to get basically the same test at everywhere. And so they need to like find all these tests and pass these tests. Whereas the reality, I think, is more toward the end of the spectrum, where like it's just a bunch of cronyism, not in a negative way,
Yeah.
but like people refer people, and it's like it's not always all that meritocratic. And is that good or bad or right or wrong? That's not really the point. That's just like that is how it works. And
Yeah.
so like figure out how it works, and get on the winning side of that.
Yeah. I think the networking is a huge part of it. I think people skills come in handy for that reason. Thankfully, I'm not afraid to meet people. Some people are very shy, so I think that's super helpful. But the technical tests can definitely be tough. I mean, I remember like looking for my first job in the industry, like people were like, oh, you need to be ready to discuss big O notation and like
Hmm.
all these things. And I'm like these things sound fascinating, but I feel like I'm not gonna do that good of a job and it's gonna, look the wrong way. So I think the context on those definitely helps. Um, and people do get nervous when they're on the spot for things. I've noticed. I've talked to some people before that. I talked to one individual at a Ruby meetup, and he said, I'm not quoting him directly, but he's like, I had to simply like select data from hashes and loop
Hmm.
through the hashes and collect the data, but because it just got pulled out of nowhere on him, like in minute,
Mm.
he just wasn't expecting it, and he choked. He didn't.
Interesting.
He didn't get the job for that reason because he didn't do it. But he's like, I know how to do it. I just there's something about that moment I wasn't expecting it, and he's like,
Yeah.
I just wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't ready. He's like, I sound so dumb because I know how to do that. I know how to select it. He's like, but I just for some reason in the moment I just didn't know what to do, and I kind of
Yeah.
know like that's something that would happen to me for sure.
I've definitely had that happen. Where I've given a really dumb answer to something and I afterward I wanted to be like the next day, like I wish I could call them and be like, wait, like here's here's a better answer. I really know. But that kind of stuff, it does happen.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I should say for the record that I interview terribly. Uh, so like take all this with a grain of salt because I'm not good at the job search.
Mm,
Um, so like even though there's certain things that I know work and they have worked for me on occasions, I don't want to claim to be some kind of expert or something like that.
mm.
Um, like I've interviewed at Shopify, GitHub, Amazon, rejected by all of them. And I've interviewed at a bunch of no-name places. Reject like there was one time I went on 20 I interviewed with 20 different organizations. So way more than 20 interviews, just 20 different companies, and I only got one job offer out of all that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then a couple years later I went on another round of interviews and I just completely struck out. It was only like four different companies, but I got rejected by all four of them. And that was when I was like, fuck this. I'm not going to play this game anymore. I'm going to do consulting
Mm,
because ironically, maybe ironically, I decided that that was actually going to be no harder than getting a full-time job. And the ceiling is higher.
right.
Like at a job, you know, I look at salaries. I was looking at salaries back then on job postings. And they would be in like the mid high hundreds, 150, 180, whatever. Um, and I was making well over 200,000 at the time already. And so that already like really limited me because there was hardly anything that was over 200,000.
Right.
Um, and now I'm making like way more than back then. And there's there's basically just no chance that I would find a job now that pays as much as I'm making as a consultant. And so that was part of my decision. Um, One, because the upside is higher as a consultant, because like if you can just figure out how to be more valuable, you can get compensated for that.
Hmm.
It's not easy at all, but if you can manage to figure that out, then you can do it. Whereas at a job, there's a sharp limit on how much you can make. So like that combined with like there's this very specific game you have to play with interviewing. It's almost like, well, not almost, it's a performance, you
Yeah.
know?
It's very performative.
Yeah. And is that good or bad? That's not the point. But it's a performance and it's a kind of performance that I happen to be terrible at, and I'm never going to be good at it. People could try to argue with me about that, but no, I'm just not ever going to be good at that. And I'm at peace with that. That's okay. So I personally am taking a different path. I just feel like I should be upfront about that in the context of this conversation.
Yeah, I think that's okay to say though that that's not for you or the way. And the thing is too is like, you know, for you to say like it's something I'm never going to get better at, some might disagree with you, but the thing is interviewing is not necessarily a skill set because the context of it kind of changes. I've
Mm.
had job interviews too where I had one I absolutely I despised it, and I think if
Hmm.
I got a job offer I would have said no because it was like it was either going to be them or the company that I work at now. And the first round of interviews, I didn't talk to a person. It was a prompt. I had
Oh,
three tries, and it would record my answers.
okay.
And I'm like, do you like, do you have such little respect for people that you don't even want to talk to them? Like, you just you.
Yeah.
I listen. I understand. Like, I'm sure hiring managers, like, I'm sure their job's not all walking around and having the best time of their life. But it just seems very, I don't know, it's very Hunger Games to me. I don't like that. It's very, "Oh, you get 3 tries. We're gonna ask you a question and, 3, 2, 1, give us an answer." Like, it just very odd. I can understand why someone would feel unmotivated. For example,
Yeah.
one example, not everyone's doing that, but to see something like that and be like, "Nah, dude, that's not for me." You
Yeah,
know?
it's disrespectful. Um, yeah, and for me, like there were a couple of interviews, like multiple different companies asked political questions in the interviews, which
Ooh,
I thought was deeply inappropriate. And it
really?
was just like a shibboleth to test for ideological conformity. And I was just like, fuck you, you
Yeah,
know?
I don't like that. That's not cool.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't like, because then you have to worry about if they have like, because I mean, mind you, you can certainly have a lot of moral things in common with that group, but like politics are very polarizing these days.
Hmm.
There's a lot of extreme polarity, so you can morally be on the same page as them, but politically you don't necessarily fall into where that polarization falls, and then you can get oh, this guy's not a fit. It's like I would not have a problem working with anyone here. You know,
Yeah.
it's just you took something and shoved me in a category that I don't necessarily fit in. You know,
Yeah.
I feel that way in politics. I don't, I everyone's very extreme things. I don't tend to fall into extremes, so I don't fit in with a lot of people in those discussions sometimes. Um,
Right. Actually, if I can find it, I want to share something real quick because it's really funny.
yeah,
Um, yes. Okay. This is so great. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Um, it's this. So if you're, at the extreme left, authoritarian, you're a good person. If you're a little outside that, you're alt-right, and everybody else is a literal Nazi. Um, and those were basically the political shibboleths I was being asked. It's like, are you here in the green good person section of the quadrant?
yeah,
Um, which, it's actually good because it's like, okay, I don't want to work here. Um,
and that's a good way of looking at it, actually. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, anyway, um, yeah, so how have you been, well, m maybe it's early on, but how have you been seeking job opportunities and stuff like that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things I've done. So early on, one of the first things was hitting that the last meetup. That's where I met Freedom and all the guys from FlexCar,
Hmm.
some other people, and just chatting with them. I love in person stuff. Like to meet people. That's always the best way to make an impression for me. That's how we met.
Hmm.
I have honestly haven't applied for too much stuff on LinkedIn. I've seen what's the site, rubyonremote.com. Some guys said good stuff about it on Reddit too, so I checked it out. It's got a lot of just Ruby Rails based jobs,
Hmm.
which are remote as it's in the name.
Hmm.
But yeah, a lot of cool stuff over there. So I've been checking a lot of things there. I'm seeing where else I've kind of taken a look. I've checked a little bit on Indeed too. LinkedIn I'm taking a look at, but like I said, I want to kind of put more stuff on my activities before I start looking over there because LinkedIn's kind of its own little box, and I feel like I have to play into that a little bit more to find something there. But
Hmm.
I found a lot of really cool, interesting stuff, some really interesting roles. So hopefully we hear back from somebody for a an interview or something like that soon. So far, I've applied to. I don't have a full list, but what do we have here? Come on, let's see here.
Yeah, it's interesting because like applying to a job to me is like buying a lottery ticket.
Mm,
Um, you might hit the jackpot, but 99% of the time it will have been a waste,
yeah,
but you have to play to win.
you do. There's a lot of just going through stuff. So there's like a couple I've done was Ninja Holdings, which is like a financial company. So like where I work now is like sort of in the wealth tech space, so that works. A spot called Mentor Collective. The position sounded interesting. The company itself was they're kind of vague in their description, but I'm interested to learn
Hmm.
more. SERP API, the Lifetime Value Co. Stripe. Stripe seems very cool. Mojo Tech. They also have an office in Providence, Rhode Island, which is right where I'm at, and a company
Okay.
called Full Bay, which isn't necessarily a Ruby position, but their product is in the like trucking and logistics industry, and I used to work in that industry, so I think
Hmm.
it can be helpful to have a comprehension of what the industry is that the product is for. Uh,
Hmm.
and a few others that I kind of didn't necessarily put down because I was just sort of you know, it was sort of less like, like you said, more like a lottery. Like, I don't know if they'll get back to me, but let's just go.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's
that,
kind of depressing. Like here, this job doesn't have any salary info.
mm,
Um,
and that's for a senior dev.
yeah, and everything is so generic. By the way, with job title inflation, I think people just like start at senior these days. Like senior means what junior used to mean.
Sometimes it feels like that. I've seen junior roles described as 3 years of experience,
Hmm.
which is like, I mean, I have over that, but still, it's like, that's crazy that that's junior. I mean, that's fine, but, like, I don't know. I think, the one thing I have found frustrating is I think people need to be a little bit, and you know what? To be honest, some companies do a good job doing this, but like having transparency of what they're actually looking for and what the job title is and what
Hmm.
it's really going to be about. I've seen some companies do that, and I have a really great admiration for when they do that, rather than just having this generic. Here's every skill set you could ever have, and it's like I mean, you're really going to find a guy that's a junior dev with 3 years of experience in Ruby, Python, Go, and C Sharp. Those are very different job, directions.
Right. And is interested in a junior title.
Right. And if you know all those, I don't know a single person that, was, I don't know. I can't see that happening. Like, my brother knows C Sharp. I don't think he's going to be going for a Rails position. You know,
Yeah.
that doesn't make much sense to me. But then some, they are more specific. They're like, hey, if you're used to Rails, are interested in going with React, and you're interested in this tech stack, like they give very specific details. I think that's much more helpful, when they have that, because
Yeah.
it gives you confidence, and you're not just applying for something we have no idea what you're getting into.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I'm remembering other things that I found really discouraging. This was meant to be like, hey, here's how to stand out. And now it's just like a depressing rant about how like shitty everything is. Um, but like there was so many job ads I saw um where they wanted React experience or like some front end framework, and I think the like client server architecture of building Rails apps is just insanity. Like it introduces so much complexity for that's not justified by the small benefit you get. Quite often the benefit is actually negative. And so it's just all this cost for no upside, negative upside even. So it's just like, no offense to people who have chosen this path, but it's just idiotic. And I don't want to get a job where the stuff I'm doing all every day is just stupid. And so, but that's like 80% of job ads. And look at this salary, like 130 to 160. Like that is shit. Like that sucks.
Yeah.
So I don't want to work there. And then here 50 to 100K, like fuck, like no thank you.
50 to 100K for senior too. I mean,
Yeah.
senior full stack. Like I have like I worked with a guy well, I technically am still involved with him, not in the same way, but at my current role, and
Hmm.
like I would consider him a senior Ruby on Rails dev, but like this guy handles like performance only. Like
Hmm.
not full stack. He's not trying to. He's not trying to get a button and a pop out to look fresh. Like,
Mhm.
he's all about his whole thing is performance all the time, everywhere, and
Okay.
sort of like, and that's like what his whole focus is on. That makes sense. I feel like if you have a specific focus, but like to imagine having to do that, but then being like, "Hey, man, we need you to make the reports look nice."
Mm.
That's a whole nother ball game, because I work with guys that dedicate all their time just to how's that pop up going to look. It,
Okay.
it's a whole nother world. I just think it's crazy that they'll just kind of shoehorn everything into one little box.
Honestly, I think at most organizations it has to be that way. It sounds like you're working somewhere that's relatively bigger. Most places they can't have somebody whose whole job is performance stuff because there's only like two or three devs in the entire company, and so they do have to have everybody do everything. Thankfully, most places are pretty reasonable about it. They're not expecting everybody to be a unicorn,
Yeah,
although they do have to ask people like, hey, today you're going to be working on performance stuff. Tomorrow you're going to be doing CSS. We don't expect you to be a genius at both those things, but just the nature of it is you just have to because there's nobody else to do it.
yeah, yeah. Versatility is a very, very important thing. And I don't know. It feels like for me it is because I mean I know what that's like as we discussed before, where like I was kind of working on like a very specific project, focusing mostly on Ruby and SQL. Then it was some Rail stuff. Then it was some React stuff. Then it's back to Rail stuff. So it's like, being open to different things is definitely important, but it can certainly be disheartening when you're trying to focus and learn something and actually be excellent at it, and not just get it at like a very high level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I'm clicking on apply for this job. I'm just gonna see what
Beehive.
so this one seems to be expired, so we'll do a different one.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
this one's GitLab, obviously a very well-known company. Um, if I were seeking a job, this is definitely one that I would be interested in.
Mm.
Um, something I'm looking for like, yeah, something that is tough a lot of times is like you don't get a chance to give them anything that's differentiating. Like you give them like your personal statistics, your name and all that stuff, but you don't really get a chance to like say anything distinguishing about yourself. Although you can do a cover letter, but it's like I don't know. I've always had a hard time with the cover letter.
Yeah, I
Kind of
had
thing.
to. Like I like I've made for every single time they've asked me for a cover letter, I've done like a custom, like I've written it myself. And I try and use like a little bit of humor in it and stuff like that and be like, I'm
Mhm.
really typing this right now. Like I didn't put this in the chat GPT. This is me typing this thing, which I don't know, whatever. But I try and make it fun and creative and do something in there that'll hopefully grab their attention. Uh,
Mhm.
and then cater it to that rather than this generic, greetings. I am searching for work. Like we all know that. I don't understand the point of having a crap ton of hyperbole in a cover letter. Just
Yeah. Yeah, actually here's the thing is like every job ad represents the company so generically that there's no opportunity to be like I saw this and it really made me interested in you guys specifically because they haven't done anything to make themselves specifically differentiated or interesting.
yeah, yeah. I think that's super important. And honestly, and you kind of go a little bit. You get a little bit blurry over time when you're searching for stuff. But there are a couple roles that I applied to where they did have some information and they did provide some stuff, and they even like they weren't even generic. Like they're kind of like talked about their culture a little bit and stuff. And I was like,
Mhm.
hey, I really like that you guys have this approach, or I really like that you guys take, data security really seriously, or I really, this about your tech stack's really cool. Like, it's nice when they have that kind of information because you can. It's easier to associate with something like that you find interesting rather than just the same old generic, just generic. We need a guy for this. We're a leader in the industry, and some of them they don't even say what they do. Like I've seen Some companies that go on,
Right.
they literally don't say anything. Like you have no idea what they do. I go to their website and they're like, "We build value by leveraging technology." And it's
Oh yeah.
like, oh wow, man, you really changed my life with that. You know, what does that even mean? You know, like I don't know. It's like, how can you be so specific with what you need and be so vague with what you are?
I know. Um, here's a pretty decent question actually. What are some customer user facing features that you've built and what was the back end to front end proportion? That's something I can work with. I can speak specifically to that. Here's a bad question. Why do you want to work at Settle and what interested you about this role? It's like what interested me because I need a fucking job. Like
Yes.
that's literally it. That's the honest answer. But you can't say that. You have to make up some bullshit.
Yeah, yeah,
And why do you want to work at Settle? I don't know. I don't know that I do. Maybe I don't because I don't know anything about the company at all.
yeah, yeah. No, it's true. There's this whole thing about like, are you like 100% on board with our mission statement? And it's like, I don't know. Like, isn't the interview tell me that? Like, if you guys are interested in me, that interest is going to make me decide whether or not I think your organization is awesome. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Why do you want to work somewhere? I mean, I need a job, and then obviously, if the place is great, you want to work at a place that you like. You know, but if I'm applying somewhere, I'm just applying because I'm trying to see what's out there. Like you can't not everyone doesn't just apply at the one dream place they want to work, or else it'd be like 2 million applications for 50 jobs. It just wouldn't make sense.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know.
it's like people don't send applications positively, they send them negatively more like it's like you don't you don't select specific ones, like you filter them out. Like you pick the ones that fit your salary range and then you look at the job description and you're like, okay, there's nothing there that like filters me out, so I'll apply to that.
Yeah,
And somehow like people on the other side don't understand that.
yeah. I think it's a cultural aspect that's changed on it, and then look, sometimes those things like I don't know, like now being at Wealthbox, like when I was first applying to work there, I wasn't like, oh my God, this, CRM for financial advisors that's a competitor to Salesforce in that space really excites me. But
Right.
it was just like the technical aspect of it seems cool for what they were looking for. I'm like, this looks awesome. And then once I started, like, had an interview and got what they were all about and stuff, I'm like, all right, this product is cool. These people are cool. Like, this is something I'm excited about. That's what got me stoked. It wasn't just, oh, look, this exists. I'm just so happy about that. Like, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily, maybe that was true years ago where, just the whole job market and work culture was different, but nowadays it's just people, I think, are forced to take like, to just be reserved. Like, you don't put your eggs in one basket. You just kind of, this looks interesting. And then you want to build up to it, because you don't want to be disappointed or else everyone looking for a job is going to be depressed all the time.
Right. Yeah, the things that I care about are like working with good, smart people. That's the primary thing. Like I don't really care about what the company does, to be honest. Like it's really all the same. Like I've worked at a million different places and it's really just all the same.
Hmm.
The domain doesn't matter like at all. The thing that makes the difference is the people you're going to be working with all day, every day.
Big time. Yeah, I think that's everything. That's what creates the like especially like in this like post-COVID world, like I see stuff talking about like especially when it comes to like trying to get people to go back to an office if that's something they want to do or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, it's about culture. And it's like you people make the culture, not where they
Right.
I had where I'm at currently is fully remote and there's better culture here than there's been at jobs where every single department works in the same building because there's no communication and people have poor attitudes. So
Mm.
it's like, it's all down to people at the end of the day. It's not about the where, what people, the people's what make, the people will ultimately be what determines how the culture is and how enjoyable it is to work there, you know, uh,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
having a connection between like management and everyone else, for sure.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Um, yeah. Well, again, it started out helpful tips and stuff like that, but fuck the system, damn the man, it's all bullshit. The world is going to shit. Everything sucks. Um, yeah, that's how it is.
That's how it feels for sometimes for sure. It definitely it's easy to get that way. I just think I guess a helpful thing is for the technical side of interviews, um, what should people look for now? Like when they're going to have a technical aptitude side for an interview, what how can people prepare for that? Do you find that there are industry norms,
Yeah.
or do you feel like there are, it's kind of just you never know what you're going to get. Someone's going to ask you to loop through an array, and someone's going to ask you about big O notation. Like, what do you think is what are we looking for these?
Yeah. I think people should be open-minded about this stuff. Um, it's ironic. Okay, rant incoming, but like so many people who consider themselves open-minded are really close-minded
Mm,
and frankly bigoted. If you look up the definition of the word bigoted, um, probably most people are bigoted, which means that they have their way of viewing things and they won't even entertain the possibility of other views being valid.
mm,
Um, and so I think people are closed-minded and bigoted when it comes to job interviews and coding exercises. Like people say that like leet code exercises are complete bullshit and it doesn't have anything to do with the work you'll actually be doing and stuff like that. And it's true that it's never related to the kind of work you would actually do, but I think it's more productive to take a step back and ask, like, hang on, why are companies doing this? And is it possible that there could be some merit to this idea? And is it possible that instead of completely dismissing this idea and refusing to participate in any of these kinds of interviews, is it possible that maybe I should try to be good at these? Um, and my mind got changed a little bit before I interviewed at Amazon, when I was reading about the process. Um, and they said that the reason that they do these coding exercises in their interviews is that if they make you do a really hard like algorithmic programming challenge, you can't fake that. Like you can talk a good game and fake your way and bullshit your way through an interview, but you can't fake actually coding something hard.
mm.
And so that's why they do that. Basically, they're just making sure you're smart and you can code.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And so once I looked at it through that lens, I'm like, okay, like fuck it. I'll go and study leak code for I didn't have much lead time. I had like 7 days or something like that. So I just like studied my ass off. Failed the test. Um, Um, but I didn't fail it and say like, oh, this was such bullshit. I failed it because I just wasn't good enough at it.
Right.
Um, and it does, it takes some study. It definitely does because again, this is not stuff that you do in your day-to-day job. Uh, and there are like patterns and solutions to these kinds of things. And so like I studied certain classes of problems. And then when they gave me the challenge, I was able to recognize it and be like, oh, okay, I've seen this. This is like a binary tree problem. And so I need to solve it with a binary tree. And like, I got like a good distance of the way there, but I don't think I did it like uh to completion and I didn't do it like quite as good as I should have and stuff like that. And so that's why I didn't pass. Um, but I think that's the key is studying all those patterns well enough and getting experience with enough different kinds of patterns to where no matter what kind of exercise they throw at you, you can be like, okay, I've seen this pattern before. This is like the general approach for that kind of thing. That's the advice that I would give for like the leak code style interviews.
Yeah. How do people generally know what kind of interview it's like what kind of technical interview it's going to be? If it's going to be something like that, or if it's going to
They
be
usually tell you.
They usually
Like
tell
if somebody gives you a leak code interview without telling you that that's what that's going to be, like that person is an asshole. Like that's no way to do it. And I've never had that happen. I've never had that happen.
that's good to hear. Yeah, because I'm especially right now, like I'm, all right, I'm making I want to focus on a Rails, job. So I'm making a Rails project. But it's like for an interview, I'm like, okay, do I keep just building experience on that, and hopefully the experience on that is what's going to get me the role, like basically falling on that, or do I want to be doing like Ruby coding challenges of sorts, and algorithmic stuff? I don't really know currently how to approach that. So I'm like, it's sort of just something I'm trying to kind of decide. I really don't know what to focus on for that,
Hmm.
because one thing's giving me relevant experience. The other thing is, I mean, I think it certainly helps as an engineer to be able to be good at these coding challenges. It's just sort of like, all right, do I just keep mindlessly jumping into those? Like, what am I focusing on? And that's sort of a currently, pardon me, that's currently a debate I have going on in my head of like, all right, what's next?
What I am looking for, what I would look for when I was interviewing people is like, are you an NPC or not, basically. So if anybody's not familiar with that, like internet lingo, NPC, non-player character, people who are just kind of living a zombie existence and doing what they need to do, uh, whatever. They're part of the system, but they're not involved really in a meaningful way.
They're just kind of not really aware, just kind of going through shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and when I would interview people, it wasn't a leak code exercise, but I did do live coding because you should be able to code. I gave people an easy exercise to filter out people who couldn't do easy things, which sadly was like most people. So many people failed the exercise that eventually I was like, is this exercise too hard? So I gave it to a 13-year-old kid and he did better than almost all the adults.
Mm.
Um, to be fair, it was a really smart 13-year-old kid, but a 13-year-old kid nonetheless. And it's like, all right, there's the bar. If you can do better than a precocious 13-year-old kid, then you can advance. Otherwise, you can't.
Right, right. And I
Yeah.
wonder why that is, like why that happens. I wonder if people get so caught up in very job specific things, they sort of stop paying attention to the essentials. Like I wonder what the reasoning is for that.
Oh, it's an easy explanation. Most people aren't very smart.
No, there we go.
Yeah. And I learned recently it's actually illegal to give somebody an IQ test as part of a job interview process.
Mm,
Um, but a coding challenge is kind of a proxy IQ test.
mm.
Yeah, and that's the thing that matters. Like companies overvalue experience and knowledge and undervalue intelligence. Because if you're smart, you can figure out anything.
Yeah.
Um, but like what you happen to know is not that important. Obviously, you have to have like a certain level of knowledge, um, and knowledge is kind of evidence of intelligence because like if you've been programming for like I paired with a guy once who had been programming Ruby for years and didn't know how to open an IRB console. And it's like, okay, that's a knowledge gap. But if you've been coding Ruby for 3 years and you don't know how to open an IRB console, like that's that's more of an intelligence problem than a knowledge problem. Like I
That's
shouldn't have to teach you that.
right. Yeah, because I mean, if you're doing Rails, right, you're gonna go binding pry, but like Ruby, I mean, that's just a matter of IRB. Like, unless he downloaded pry, is like a gem. But
Right, you just type IRB and hit enter. Like you should know that.
yeah,
Um, anyway, that's another unfortunate thing about the job market is they look for, in my opinion, they look for the wrong things. And so that's why, me personally, I I'm a what's non-conformant or whatever, and I just dropped out of the system and I decided to do my own thing. So I'm probably not the right person to give a lot of job advice. Um, and I don't even remember what the point was, if there was a point.
Yeah, no, well, no, the point was just about preparing for technical interviews. Like, well, that was the initial question that we kind of gone on from. It's like, what, like for someone like me, what should I focus on, right? Like, it's I'm doing a little bit of a lot of different things. Like, I don't just have a Ruby project, like, I mean, a Rails project. Like, I've made just literally like just really essential crap. Like, I sat down and I just made a like a really simple like OOP, like it's just like class methods. You got a bunch of objects. They're all cars with different attributes. You're looping through them and categorizing them based on what has the best total average based on those attributes. Those attributes are done as numbers, right? It's just math. It's really simple crap. It's nothing but like I was kind of thinking, I'm like, when's the last time I actually did something like this of just taking data, looping through it, organizing
Mhm.
it? I thought that was something that was important to do outside of just the rail stuff of, model view
Yeah.
controller and everything else. So I'm kind of trying to, think about other ways that I can make sure I'm open minded to a bunch of different stuff. Then again, I'm focusing on, like I said, Ruby and Rails stuff. I bet if someone asked me to detail everything about the DOM, I might forget and look like an idiot. But
Yeah, and I hate that stuff. They're just like probing for trivia. And it's again, they're testing for your knowledge. It's like, okay, do you know this random fact? What's the capital of Uzbekistan? It's like, all right, well, I don't fucking know, but
yeah,
like I know a lot about world history in general, but like don't probe me for trivia because that's like not smart.
yeah,
Um, but I think, what people want to see, hopefully, is just like some kind of evidence that if they hire you, it won't be a disaster, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and so whatever you can show, like some kind of side project, some code, just like anything that something that shows that you are like a smart, responsible person who can do projects. There's obviously like not one right answer to that. Um, but that's something you can demonstrate. I do have to go because we've gone way over time, unfortunately.
No,
Um,
at all. I've really enjoyed this discussion on stuff,
Great.
and and honestly, it was more than just ranting. I think it was more about pointing out issues with the system. But I think if you don't point those out, people aren't going to expect them, and then they're gonna get very disappointed. But I think it is
That's
important
true.
that it's important to point out the fuck yous because it allows people to kind of realize, look, you can always improve yourself, but it's not always your fault, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
you
that's an
know.
important thing to remember. Like I said a minute ago, like most people aren't very smart. The people interviewing you, they aren't exceptions. Like I've been interviewed so many times where the person is interviewing me and I'm just like, you fucking idiot. You're like missing the whole point of this entire thing. And they think I'm stupid because they're so stupid. And it's just really frustrating.
Yeah.
So, set your expectations really low. I think that's good advice. It's good life advice in general. Um, yeah, and it's hard to know, like, did you fail because it's your fault? Did you fail because of them? Uh, don't like don't like do a cop out and blame everything on everybody else because that's not productive. So
Certainly.
that stuff is hard to know, but yeah, it's sometimes it's them and not you.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, thanks, Derek, for joining me. Thank you, dear viewer, for if you've made it this far, thanks for watching whatever this was. And I'll see you next time.
All right. Take care.